good evening, everybody, and welcome to wrestling meeting number 4, I think. It's all blending together as usual, but welcome and thank you for being with us tonight. Same process as usual. If you've got questions that are relevant to the topic of conversation, if you'll put those in the chat, or it is a small enough group that you could probably just unmute and ask as well, and we will respond to those as quickly as we can. So again, thank you for joining us this Wednesday evening, and tonight's presenter, who will be talking about stalling, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly, is our Northwest Region assigner, and that is Jason Hare from Farmington. So I will give you screen share ability, and the floor is yours, sir. Thank you for doing this tonight.
All right, hang on a second, guys. Let's see if I can get this to pull up here. Gallery view. Share. Okay, you guys should be able to see my screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, first of all, guys, thank you for hopping on tonight and talking about wrestling and talking about, stalling specifically. It's a challenging call for us. It gives us a lot of opportunity across our state, in my opinion, to improve in this area. And, I'm trying to keep this presentation very relevant to our state, very relevant to us, to the point that, we're using the video from the state championships from last year and talking, about some of those situations that we had specific to stalling. So with that being said, some of these conversations can be a little bit challenging, but, please, interject, speak up. Let's talk about them as a group as we go through it. So stalling in our sport, in my opinion, is the most subjective call that we have. There's a lot of gray lines with it. There's a lot of misunderstandings with it. And frankly, it's underutilized within our sport. We see different variations of the call based on geographical areas. We see differences based on the knowledge and style of officiating across our team as a state. And it's just, we don't use it enough to keep aggressive wrestling moving forward. So within the rule book, there's a few pages on this, and then you go to the casebook and there's some more information there. But I think we all have to talk more about it as a group, right? To make it have impact to us. Within the book, there's definitely some keywords that are used. Each wrestler is required to make an honest, quote, attempt to stay within the circle. They are encouraged to wrestle aggressively in all positions. And they're encouraged to or discouraged of using, stalling tactics to gain a competitive advantage. These key terms, attempt, should wrestle aggressively, avoid using. These are not clear cut. These create gray areas for us that can be controversial with the calls. And I'm going to start this with some of these, quote, tactics that people use as, to gain that competitive advantage. So the first video I have is from 2011, and it's the semifinals match of the Ironman tournament. Very, very competitive match, kind of the precursors to this. The wrestler in the gray singlet had a kind of a lucky break. He got the other guy down, took him down, and went directly feet to back. So the score is 5-0 coming into this. The wrestler in the black singlet is the number 1 seed, projected to walk away with this match. And this is a very controversial match as it goes through. So just kind of watch, hang out, and then let's talk about it afterwards. So that's the first one. Note the first guy back to the center. The ref is there. And we're still waiting on him to get there. So first of all, guys, was that it really choppy, or could we see it pretty well?
No, it was pretty
Really choppy. Yeah, really choppy.
Well, shoot. Okay, so let me explain what happened then if you guys weren't able to follow it through the match. So wrestler in the black singlet, very aggressive, trying to score. He's down 5-0, shoots him out of bounds. And the official immediately calls stalling on the action move. Great call, in my opinion. Action continues. They're wrestling more. Again, multiple shot attempts coming from wrestler in the black singlet, and takes him down, cuts him, pushes him out of bounds. And the other singlet or the other guy, basically is tired. He's not doing well. So instead of taking a stall call and getting, dinged a point, he takes an injury time. In this situation, for us as an official, this puts us kind of in a bad spot. We have a pretty good indication that there may not be an injury, that he's using this time to catch his breath, to fill the tank back up and get ready to continue the round. But unfortunately, we cannot deny that injury time. So I want to pause here for a minute and just talk about this situation as a group. What do we think about this, and what can we do as officials to counteract this, or ask probing questions to the coach, or should we just get away from it altogether? What do we think as a group on this situation?
Jason, first off, is what period are we in, and what's the score? Can you see that?
Period. It's first period, and score is 5-0. And there's about 30 seconds left in the first period here. I'm sorry, 5-2.
A little choppy, Jake. Can't hear you.
Was there a stall warning issued?
There was the official called the stall on the action shot as he was going out of bounds, and yes, there is a stall warning already.
So what minute is that, or where are you in the match? Because I have it here. I found it. We were trying to find what minute you're in.
Oh, I gotcha. Let me see if I can get it to where it'll show me again. I think we're at like 3 minutes into it. Three and a half, 3:30, somewhere in there.
The video wasn't too clear, but from what I can tell, Black's really pushing the pace. And if a stall call and a point issued was the case, I tend to agree with it myself.
So the stall call, absolutely, right? The part in question is an injury time was used in really there's no injury that we can physically see. So I think it's a tactic used from either the wrestler or the coach to kind of stall, wait out the match, rebuild a little bit, catch the breath, and that way he can, maintain his composure going through.
So I have a question for you, more experienced officials, I guess. In a situation like that, obviously you can't call stalling, you can't reject an injury time, but is that something that you guys put in the back of your head, knowing that the injury was probably false?
I do personally. Rusty, I know you're on, and I hate to call you out on this one, but you're probably the most experienced person that we have. What do you think?
In terms of position, the referee needs to be in proximity to the quote unquote injured athlete. This allows you to hear what's going on between coaches and athlete. And we get back into that. If you are going to put this in your memory bank, you have already sold your next call.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that 100%.
John, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say the biggest problem is we know we can't ignore the injury timeout, even though we know it's quote unquote BS. If the kid's injured and we're overlook it, which I've seen an official do in the past, we open ourselves up to a lot of trouble.
Exactly. We can't, if they signal injury time, we have to honor that. And if we don't, it really puts us in jeopardy, of it's not something that we should do, right? It puts us in great risk. Yeah. But we all know that it's a stall tactic and technique. So let's transition here. Same match. I have another clip, and this is later in the match, but good situation here with what they're doing. We still see the pace. We see everything happening. I think it just replayed it. Dang it. It did. How do I go to the next one? Okay, let's try this again, guys. Sorry. All right. So this is much later in the match. This is around the second or third period. Same situation. We still have the same pace from the wrestler in the black, and we still have the same type of mat presence from the other wrestler, taking his time to come back to the center. There's no shot attempts. Nothing's really happening. He's made his choice, but now he won't come to the center, right? He won't get set. What do we think about that? How many of us have had that situation?
Hey, Jason, I think most of us have probably been in that type of a situation before. And you can tell just by his body language and his lack of effort to return to the middle, he's trying to stall. So yeah, I would agree with the official. He is stalling. He's taking a little bit more time than what he should be. But again, the guy in the black is pushing that pace. So I think, you know, I don't know. Just looking at that, I think we've all been in that situation before where we've seen that. And I think as officials, we try to push that guy along a little bit further. But when we see that he's really making that effort not to move along, that's definitely a stall warning. And you can see the officials trying to get him to the center, and he's not centering up.
Exactly.
I think one important thing with this is to communicate to that wrestler as it's building up. So let him know, hey, you need to move to the center. You need to come to the center. You know, next time I'm going to ding you on it, and kind of communicate that. So when you do finally ding him, it's not a surprise.
I
And
agree,
I'd agree with that too,
100%.
Adam. And you can see the body language of the wrestler when he gets dinged with that stall warning. He's already questioning that call. But I think Adam makes a valid point too, because I know before in some matches when I get into that situation, I'll let them know, hey, we're flirting with a stall here. We need to pick up the pace. Let's get the action moving. And if it continues, then you ding them. I mean, you've given them the warning. Now it's not a surprise.
They're in the semis of the Ironman. He knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very, very tough tournament. And these two wrestlers are extremely competitive and have been successful throughout their career. So absolutely he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it intentional. And you know, I think the official does a fantastic job with calling it. I think these are two really, really good examples of a properly used stall call. Guys, I really, really like the feedback. That feedback's kind of leading into the next point of what I want to talk about. So we're going to transition here out of the unique situations of using stalling as a tactic to gain a competitive advantage, and we're going to transition to the neutral position. But with that, you know, I put the stuff here that's in the rule book, and I'm not going to read it to you. We're all familiar with it. The true takeaway of this slide and of this entire presentation is we as a group, we as a team across the state, you know, we need to come together and establish some key criteria that we use to call stalling effectively and consistently. Whether we're in the neutral position, the offensive position, or the defensive position, what criteria are we going to set for ourselves to make that call? You know, me specifically, and I know that we've talked about this in our Northwest group, when we're in the neutral position, we look at, you know, who is initiating the contact, who is controlling the center, you know, and realistically, who's working, right? And we use, you know, shot counts, and we kind of use a rule of three. Things happen in a rule of three. So if it's 3 shots to no shots, we're gonna call that guy on the next action shot or the X action motion. And we try to communicate that not only to our officials, but we communicate those tendencies to our coaches as well. Whether it's during pre-meet or during, you know, a side conversation with that coach, we want to make sure they are clear with the criteria that we've set amongst ourselves of how we're going to call stalling. That way, when we call it, they're not surprised about it. They know it's coming. They know how we're going to call it, and that call is going to be consistent across officials. So Adam, I know you're on. Rusty, I know you're on. I don't know if Mondo is or not, but what conversations are we having about establishing that criteria across our state? And are you seeing it being, is it effective and is it successful when we have those conversations with our coaches and with our wrestlers? Adam, can you go
Yeah.
first on that
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. I think anytime you paint a clear picture of the criteria that you're looking at, it makes it easier for ourselves, and it creates less arguments or questionable calls with coaches and wrestlers. So I think it'd be a good thing if we establish it as a state, and we're consistent no matter where we go on the call that we're making and the reason why we're making those calls. And if there's established parameters for that, coaches really can't argue it. So I think it's a good thing. And I think usually when you establish those guidelines for those coaches, they're usually pretty good about understanding it and then going with it.
I agree with that.
So this is Homie or Everett out of Las Cruces, guys. I don't think we necessarily need a set of criteria. You got to remember, stalling is a judgment call. You give these coaches, I'm going to take 3 shots. What's the first thing the coach is going to tell you when they see 3 shots, no matter what happens? Stalling, and you gave me that criteria, so I'm holding you to it. Here's the stall call. Give it to me. Remember, I think the only conversation that needs to be told to our coaches is they need to be wrestling, and they need to be wrestling consistent in balance. That's all we need to tell them. Everything else is going to be a judgment call. I mean, I think judgment goes off the level that you've wrestled in. Like, I think it was riding legs, and I used to ride legs in high school, so I know exactly what's going on. I know if they're working or not. If you never rode legs, sometimes you're like, well, that looks like stalling to me. So it's a complete judgment call. I think what you need to establish is that you as an official are consistent in what you call. We can't do that as a whole state. The variables are just too much. And then, like, I won't call the same stalling that Mondo will call. I won't call the same stalling that Willie will call. It's all going to be different, but as long as I'm consistent, every time I'm in that situation, that's what we can do the coaches.
I would just like to chip in and say that I agree with that. I think that, the consistency comes down to more of an individual level, because, we can do all we want as a state, but they're going to point to the NFHS rule book at the end of the day. So, unless we're consistent with that, then it's kind of all out the window.
All valid points, guys. Very, very valid points. And that's why I'm trying to open this up and engage and have that conversation as a state. What we're trying to do with this is get that dialogue. Hey, this is what we're doing up here in Northwest. Adam kind of shared what he's doing. Now we got that southern point. And you're absolutely right. In the rule book, there is some verbiage in there of what stalling is and how we call it. However, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's not in there that is that judgment call that's very subjective to the official, and we're trying to put some bubbles around some of those to shore those up and make them more consistent as a team, as a working unit across our state. It's a very, very tough ask, and it's a very, very tough topic to get right and to get right consistently.
And I think Homie's exactly right, where coaches start to play that card too, and they were looking for the call instead of actually wrestling. And so there is a lot of subjectivity. I think what Jason's point is trying to create a little protection for officials, maybe younger guys, in helping them make that call if they're unsure, or giving them a little bit of criteria internally to help them decide without getting picked apart by the coach or them trying to argue,
And I guess where I come, to drive this point, we have a few schools that are up in our area that have, an entourage of coaching staff. And all you hear, as soon as they put their anklet on, is he's stalling. The match hadn't even started yet, but by golly, they're stalling. So to be able to pull that coach aside and have that dialogue with them, hey coach, this is what we're looking for. These are the specific things that not only myself, but our team uses to make these calls or help us funnel down into that call. It's a shot count. It's who's controlling the center, who's initiating the action, who's working on the ties or the underhooks, right? Outlining those key things that make that call happen. And I'll end on this. It makes it a significantly easier call for us when we make the call on an action motion. When he's doing that takedown, we're dinging him, right? When he's working for that underhook, and we've already made up our mind, we're dinging him. Make it a point to call on the action.
My turn. So a lot of good points being made. I like a lot of what Homie had to say. We need to make sure that we're all defining consistency the same way. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, because consistency is me believing what I believe about wrestling and putting that into action all the time. Nobody would argue that we're going to call stalling the same way at 113 pounds as we are at heavyweight. That's just not a reality. So consistency goes back and leans on our philosophy again. Consistency, also goes to our baseline about, and I know a lot of referees that will preach fire and brimstone, that stalling is the devil's work. It's inherently evil and it has no place in wrestling. Dear friends, stalling is a big part of wrestling and should be. It's an appropriate part of wrestling and should be. If you're asking a kid that's ahead by one in the semis of state finals, or excuse me, in the semis of state, if you're asking a kid to throw caution to the wind and just suddenly forget that he's ever been taught anything or she's ever been taught anything and take a stupid shot and get gone behind, you can't force kids to be stupid and give up matches. So that goes to our timing. It goes to our verbalization. It goes to our setup of the calls. It goes to understanding, where the kids are in the tournament. It goes to, understanding, perhaps, credentials, and a great kid has no problem with you, the referee, saying, look, I'm not going to let you just cheat the guy or the girl. So take what you got to take, but that same great kid knows how to operate under a warning. They know how many points they can give up. They know how many seconds are left in the match. We need to know that about it too. If we tell Coach A that we're counting shots, what is he going to say to the next referee? He's going to tell them that they have to count shots. And he's counting shots. And so then the coach heard from a respected referee that shot counting is going to get us a call. It's a dangerous path to go down. So I think you have to take each performance in each match at its own. In the match with Tomasello that you had us watch, that was going to be an ass kicking 2 hours ago when it got scheduled. So is the kid hiding out a little bit? Yeah. But he's already got enough problems. We can't just gang up on him because it looks ugly. We got to try to make it look the best we can. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. Homer muted.
No, Russ, guys, that was perfect. And I value everybody's input. That's why, building this presentation is kind of centered around having the dialogue. It's not anybody preaching or having clear-cut things. It's a prompt conversation. And this is perfect. I think this is great.
So I have a question. So what is the difference? What are you considering a shot? Right.
Good question.
A shot to one coach, a slap on a leg could be a shot to one coach, and to me, that's not a shot. So his kid slapped his other kid's leg 3 times. Right? That's stalling. So you're setting a precedent, and I don't think you're trying to write a rule
stop stalling, it's already written. It's already written in the rule book, and you're trying to rewrite it. And I don't think that's what's intent. But stalling comes with experience, knowing what stalling in the first period and the first part of the tournament compared to stalling in the third period in the final round. That all comes with experience for the official. And if you tell the coach, "Hey, I'm going to be looking for 3 consistent shots," and then at that point, I'm going to call stalling. Well, he may think that his wrestler or his or her wrestler is doing 3 consistent shots, but in my head, I'm like, that's not a shot. He just slapped his face. But now he wants stalling because we already set the precedent of, hey, after 3 shots, I'm calling stalling. So I don't think that's the right way to go. And by the way, all of us are in Van getting to
Gotcha. No, I valid point. And we have to have a legitimate attempt, right? It, slapping your leg or taking a crap shot. I mean, there's interpretation there, and there's judgment in every step of the way that we do this. And I agree with you. I absolutely agree with that comment that we do have to be careful. We do have to, kind of pick our battles and pick and choose how we do it. Just the more consistent that we can be as officials, the better off we'll be long term.
So I also think you're trying to do, just tell me again, you kind of want to create that conversation, right? So if I could give you my advice, this is advice that was passed down to me. It was the dumbest, smartest piece of advice I've ever heard, but it really helped me with golf from Mondo. It was from Mondo, and it's probably passed down from the Stone Age, who knows. If you think it's stalling, it's stalling. And to dig a little deeper in that is you always contemplate with yourself as an official, like, oh, is he stalling? What is he doing? Right when that thought comes to your head, bam, that's stalling. Because if you have to think about it, they're obviously doing something that's avoiding wrestling, or they're trying to put the opponent at a disadvantage. So again, the advice I got was, if you think it's stalling, it's stalling. Just trust yourself. That's what I teach my people here, down here in El Paso.
I agree with that. If you think it's stalling, something is happening that is getting your brain to go that direction. And chances are very high that is true and that wrestler is stalling. I agree with that. All right. So for the next video that we have. So this is our last year's state championships. This is the 220-pound weight class semifinals. And stalling had a significant impact on this match. Elaine was our official, and I thought she did a great job. They're on their feet. They're, the heavier weight classes. So absolutely, we have to call it differently. But I think the stalling calls were spot on here.
I don't know if you're sharing your screen, Jason.
Yeah, it should be.
I can see it. I can.
I can see it too. Just refresh yours, Diego.
Alrighty. Oh, there we go.
So we're in the second period here, and the only point scored was an escape here, an escape point. So that stall call that we just had is going to be very impactful as we go later in this match. Elaine called on the action call, and I believe she called it correctly. Let's see. Okay, different match, lower weight class, 106 here, right? Again, competitive tournament. Who's controlling the center? Who's initiating contact? Calling on the action. Again, I think that's a great example of an effective stall call. And the last point with this in the neutral position, I'm going to go back in time here a little bit. I've seen officials hold up both hands and do a double stall call, especially with the heavier weights. That is in my opinion, that is one of the most embarrassing calls that we could ever do. In my opinion, you find the aggressor, right? You ding the other kid first, and then you immediately follow with a second stall call. Never should we hold up two hands and ding both wrestlers at one time. Have any of us ever seen that? Silence. Awesome. All right, let's play it.
National high school rules require that stalling be called by the referee whenever it is recognized, regardless of the position of the wrestler, the time in the match, or the score of the match.
I don't know if we caught that sequence right, but identified the aggressor, made the call, allowed some time, and then called the other wrestler. Do we agree with that call in the sequence that it happens?
I do. I think you're right, Jason. I think it's better to go one and the other, even if you want to ding them both.
I do agree with the fact of not raising both hands at the same time. I would have gave them a little bit more chance, in my personal opinion. You know what I mean? So maybe a couple more seconds just to see how action kind of turns out. But yeah, I think that generally speaking, if you feel that both of them are stalling, that you can hit them one right after the other.
And just not really seeing a little bit more leading into that the first stall. I mean, usually when you see those heavyweights, it's just going to be the Russian bear dance anyway. But I guess kind of riding on what Diego said, I can understand the first stall, let it kind of develop a little bit, see if we get any more of an aggressive nature into that. And then from there, then you can go.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
agree.
like to give them a reaction time, so to speak.
I think the point though with that is when you make that call for the first guy, you've already determined that both of them are stalling. So really, once you start with that initial call, nothing in the action is going to change how you make that second call on that second guy. Does that make sense?
Let me pose a question here too. And in that situation, I know that neither one of them are doing anything. Does this give us the opportunity to possibly call a stalemate, even though they're not truly in a stalemate position, and communicate, hey guys, we have to pick up the match here. That first one's on me, the next one's on you. Does it give us that opportunity? What do we think about that?
Kind of beat me
I
to
would
it,
say
Jason,
that
but I've never called a stalemate in that situation, but I have broke the matchup and just came back to the center and said, look, guys, had that conversation. People are here to watch wrestling. Like, let's stay in the center and wrestle. Nobody's doing anything here. I'm going to start looking for stalls, but I've never called a stalemate. Probably a pretty good idea maybe to do that, but I've definitely broke the action up and had that discussion.
I'm riding with Jed on that. Jason, I've also done the same. I don't think I would call a stalemate in that situation. I have stopped it when I've noticed there's nothing going on. I'll call them back to the middle and I'll just tell them right there. I'll warn them both that we're starting to flirt with a stalling situation, that we need to pick up the pace, or that pretty much that's a warning to both of them without already giving them the physical red or green wristband. That's letting them know that it's coming. So if they don't pick up the pace, it's coming. So they're not going to be surprised when they get hit.
Yes, exactly.
I don't like the idea of a stall when they're both on their feet and not tangled up. So I think that I would stay away from the stall. But in a case where, let's say you have two heavyweights and, absolutely nobody's doing anything for, let's say 45 seconds, the second that one of them starts making what I would call an attempt, even if it's not a clear cut shot or something, you got to choose somebody to ding, you know what I mean? So I would ding the kid that's, seeming to be more defensive, give it another couple of seconds. And if that offensive wrestler doesn't make another attempt, that's when you start dinging him.
Good points. The more that we can communicate when there's a lack of aggression, I think the better off we're going to be long term.
That's what I was going to say too, Jason, is a lot of times just communication in the middle of the match helps too. They're talking about neutral position. You can talk to them as they're moving and say, hey, we need action, guys. We need action. Or even from top bottom, somebody make an action, somebody move. And then you can kind of make that call based on what those wrestlers do. So a lot of times you can just kind of communicate that to them too and kind of tell them as they're still wrestling without stopping action or doing any of that and saying, hey, we need to pick up the pace a little bit.
Yep, I agree. Guys, we're kind of dragging on time a little bit. So from the neutral position, I think we've had great dialogue, great communication as a group. Any other areas or any other interjections that we want to have in the neutral position before moving forward? Perfect.
I'm good.
So let's go to the offensive position, right? Referee position, guy on top. That's what we're looking for, right? In the book, there's some guidelines that it's giving us. And again, there's these key words that it likes to use, the attempt to return to the mat, attempting to improve or work for a fall, dropping to that one leg or both legs without moving up, holding one leg to the buttocks. All of these things are verbiage in the book, but they do come with interpretation of how they're being used in the match. We're going to go back to our match with the state championships last year, 220, 4A with Aztec and Los Lunas. And again, stalling, it was the difference in this match. So do we want to watch that one more time or do we have it?
Could we get one more time?
That's a good call. There was no attempt to return him to the mat. That's a good call by Elaine.
I agree. And it's a little choppy. So, I was trying to get a good gauge of the clock, but yeah, you can see there's about 6 seconds that runs off in that little, altercation. So I think that, she let the right amount of time run off before hitting that call.
The one question I would ask, and I agree with the call as well. I think it was absolutely executed well. I think bottom man made the effort to come to his feet. He's peeling hands. Top man made no attempt to return and walked directly with him out of bounds. Did our defensive wrestler, did he make an attempt to stay inbounds? Did he, create the action of going out? What do we think about that?
Guy's down by 4.
Agree.
I think he's just trying to get away from the guy, and their momentum drove them both out. But again, the offensive guy does have to try to return him that or keep him inside.
It wasn't convincing enough to me that he was, his main goal was just to get out of bounds. It looked to me like he did a stand up and that the offensive kid was hanging on the hip.
And the
And
speed
the
of
way
the
we
video
always say,
kind of shows you a little bit, but they just walked it straight out.
yeah, and the way we always try to explain it as best as possible is like, why is the guy going to expire that much energy to get to his feet and then just run out of bounds?
Exactly.
I think the other thing to look at a little bit on this one is the top guy has his hands locked around the waist, which tells me that he's in total control of the guy's hips. So that alone tells me too, versus like if the hands are open and the bottom guy's trying to create separation and the top guy's following him out of bounds.
Agree. Let's change here a little bit. Let's watch that one again. How many times have we seen this? Right, bottom man comes to his feet, top man lifts, carries him right out of bounds. So they're showing stalling here, but we intentionally take him out of bounds. Stall call or flea call?
I'd say flea.
Let's see that again, Jason. It's kind of hard to tell because is it the momentum when he's lifting him? And then, I don't know. And then he sees that he's heading out of bounds, so he stops. Because it looks like when he starts to lift him, he's leaning back. It's hard to tell whether he's carrying him out or if the momentum is taking him out.
From this
Could be
situation,
the weight shifted him that way.
That's what I'm wondering.
you know, in that action, we as officials have to call something. But in my opinion, the stall call is the safe call. Everybody will understand. The flea call, I mean, he intentionally took him out of bounds, right? So you could make an argument there.
I gotta just say one thing on that. I mean, if he's in the middle of scoring and you pull him up and out, then I could see. But if you just lift him up and take him out where he has no way of scoring, I would probably just go with the stall call on that one.
I personally would go with the stall call also, but we have seen it multiple ways here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I'm kind of, you know, I'm bummed out that Paul's not on the call tonight. I really wanted to talk about this situation. Installing, right? In Jaime, you know, and Homie, you know, you alluded to this early on. Each match has its own dynamics and its own structure that we have to use and interpret when we're calling stalling. Is there a difference when how we call based on the period or where we're at in the match? Where are we, you know, we're in overtime, we're in the ultimate tiebreaker. Does the criteria change? Kind of a precursor to the next video here is the, you know, last year's state championships. It's the second round consolation rounds. They are in the ultimate tiebreaker. You know, one of these kids is going home without placing at the state tournament. It definitely has impact. There's been some stalling calls earlier on in the match. There's 16 seconds left, and let's watch. Let's talk about this one. We want to watch it one more time.
Yeah,
let's
it's
look at it again.
it's
Look at
kind
that.
of
It's a little
slow. I
choppy.
don't know if it's my phone or your speed that's kind of lagging a little.
Let's what? Yeah, it's choppy, Jason.
Gotcha. Let's go back. All right, let's see if we can play it again.
I was actually watching the wrestling. How much time comes off the clock? I know you said there was 16 seconds from the start to the finish. When
I think
when they got onto their feet, it didn't look like he had control, and it didn't look like there was evident. It didn't look like he was trying to get that return.
Yeah, I think they got him to their feet around 11, and then he called the call around like 3 seconds.
Correct.
That's a pretty big window of time to be on his feet without that attempted mat return. Plus, that kid had that wizard, and they're pretty deep too, so he was running a pretty good defense.
I think I would have stopped the action earlier with a stalemate and let him have a fresh start if it was me.
Where would you
My
have hit him with that
question.
stalemate, Jeff?
What happened in the first 14 seconds?
The kid from Bloomfield was kind of just sitting on his ankle, and then when they came up, he tried transitioning into that leg, but he never really had that control to get him. It looked like he was trying to gain better position to put him on the ground, but he never got there.
No, we saw 16 seconds out of 30. What happened in the other 14?
The other 14 seconds, not a lot is going on. There's an attempt from Academy, kind of a half-hearted attempt from Academy, and then there was a return there. So
did it go out of bounds? Why did they stop?
I think they stopped because the clock was over, Rusty.
No,
I'm talking about before this, Mika.
Oh, I got you.
We saw the last 16. I want to know what happened in the first 14.
They did go out of bounds.
Okay.
Okay. That makes a huge difference. If in the first 14 there was a stalemate call, this is a brilliant call. If there wasn't a stalemate call, you got some options here. And you can't tell the guy in blue, well, just turn him loose because you can't improve that.
Yeah.
I mean, look what's on the line.
Exactly. So no, there was no stalemate call prior to this. And once you call that stall call, that match is over, right? There is no improving, there's no rebound, there's nothing, because we're in the ultimate ride out here. And truly,
the rule book or the case book state that the first one has to be a stalemate, because you don't have to score. Your job is just to hold him down. That's why it's called a ride out.
I scoured the rule book and case book both, trying to find that verbiage, and it is nowhere in those books. It is not in there. This
Are you talking about the scenario for a stalemate? The initial one is a stalemate?
Yes.
Where you guys pointed it out to me at the state tournament after this incident was in an NFHS newsletter or some type of something that got sent out. It's not in the rule book or the case book. It's just a little blurb that shows a picture and says, in the ultimate ride out, a stalemate shall be called prior to a stalling. In that situation.
Yeah, and the ultimate, because of course.
But this is what that was. This was the ultimate ride out too.
Correct. Yeah, I mean,
they need to include that little excerpt in the rule book.
it would sure help. I agree. And I credit Paul that's a tough call to make, right? I mean, ultimate ride out, a stall call, that's a tough call to make, and he made it. So I applaud that. Any other comments on this topic or this?
I have a
section?
question on it real quick, just
Yeah.
for clarification. So on the ultimate ride out, are we saying that the top man should still be trying to break him down and not just holding on? He's still trying to score? Is that what we're saying?
That's where I'm at. I'm wondering, the whole point is for the top guy to hold on, right? Like, if not, he loses. So I don't understand a stall call.
I think we're talking about in the situation where they drop down to a leg and they're not working their way back up. You kind of have an out by giving a stalemate initially and restarting them before you have to make that stalling call. So you just give them a fresh start so they don't stay in a situation where they're stuck on a leg and none of them are really progressing.
Right.
So what if bottom man, what if they're in referees and bottom man's trying to get out and top man's just holding on? Because that's how most ride outs are. Are we going to look at doing a stalemate and then if it continues a stall call from there? Or are we just looking, are we looking for top man to still be active?
My
opinion. So go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
My opinion here, I mean, top man is, the offensive wrestler. Yes. However, his job here, his success of winning is to prevent the bottom man from escaping.
Yep.
Or scoring near fall or scoring a point, right?
Right.
But his sole purpose, and he is declared the winner if the bottom man does not escape. And I think that sets the criteria for what his job is at this point. So,
I agree.
But I don't think that goes to say that, you can just stall the whole period. I think that, you should still be working for turns and breaking them down. I don't think that it's just a, hang on for dear life type of situation.
Right. In the tiebreaker, that first initial stall that you see, right? That very first one that you see is stopped and automatically a stalemate. Anything after that, if you feel it's stalling, then by all means call it. That's what that newsletter said. So at the ultimate tiebreaker, the very first sign of stalling on, you break it up as a stalemate, and then top man still has to work. And if you feel that it's stalling, then you award, necessary.
So then are we going to clarify with coaches? Because right now, ultimate ride out is just hold on. Are we going to clarify with coaches that top man still needs to be working and trying to break them down? Because
I don't know that it is just hold on, that's my point.
You still have to, the ultimate tiebreaker doesn't change any kind of stalling criteria. Stalling criteria is from when the whistle blows to the match ends. So either way, he still has to work from the time the match starts to the time the match stops. So it's not just.
If you go and watch most ultimate ride outs, the top man's just trying to hold on for the most part, trying to keep him from escaping or reversing, but he's just holding on. He's not trying to break him down. He's not trying to do anything. He's just holding on. So that's why I'm asking for clarification. So that way we're all on the same page.
Well, let's just say let's say that situation happens in the third period. What are you going to call in that situation?
That would be stalling.
Well, it's different. That's why it's the ultimate tiebreaker.
That's why
but I'm saying beyond the initial stalemate, right? If you think he's stalling, you stalemate it in the ultimate tiebreaker.
Very first.
If you think he's still stalling, like you would in the third period, then you dinged him. So it's the criteria, like Carlos said, doesn't change. The only thing that changes is that you have basically a lifeline to say, okay, I'm going to stalemate it. We're going to start over. You got to keep working. And more so, I look at that situation as when you're on a leg, right? When you're holding on to a leg, and you're not working your way up because you're stuck or whatever. Instead of wasting all that time and letting time tick down, you stalemate it and start it over. If you end up in the same situation, then you could ding them with a stall call and give that point if that's where you're at in the progression of your stalling.
Right.
And to that end, you
but
just
there's
have to
been
be
plenty of
quick with the
times I've
call.
seen them holding onto the leg and just standing with the leg in an ultimate right out just to hold on, because ultimately it's the bottom man's job to get out. So what I'm telling you is coach's understanding is that you just hold on. You just don't let him go. Don't let him escape or reverse you. You don't have to do anything except hold on. So that's where I'm saying if we're going to look at stalling and the stalemate and stalling and stuff like that, that it's something that we may need to clarify with coaches, because their understanding is you just hold on. Don't let them get away.
You know,
Reason
I
that's-
think I think we're limiting this to, what if he just drops to a leg, is holding on one? Do we stalemate that? Well, what about if, he's got a 2-on-1 on, an arm, and he's directly behind him and he's got an override with his leg? That bottom man is going to have a really, really hard time scoring from that position. If he just stays there, how is that any different? And do we still go to that stalemate call first before a stall call? In my opinion, yes, that's what we do. We should always use that stalemate call in this situation, in this criteria first as our primary lifeline, and then follow afterwards with stalling.
The reason that stalemate rule was inserted into the definition for the ultimate right out was to keep people from having to live what Paul lived for the next 10 minutes.
Yes, I agree. This match on track, it's like 22 minutes long, because there's coaches discussion. There's, I know Adam, you were called to the table. There was tremendous discussion about this because of the impact of that call. And again, I applaud Paul for making that call. It's tough, right or wrong, however we see it. He had the heart to do it. So I applaud that. Guys, we are 1 minute, or I'm sorry, 3 minutes past our time. So we got to move forward here. Basically this is the closing with this. I think we've had great dialogue over this. Stalling is as Rusty said, it's a critical component within the sport of wrestling. And it can be very, very effective on both sides. It can be an effective call from an official and an effective technique for a wrestler to navigate through a match. We've had great dialogue, but thank you for giving that to us. Any areas or any topics that we want to talk about that we didn't go through? I know I'm missing, the defensive portion here, but for the sake of time, I didn't think we would have enough time to go through it. So anybody have anything else to add or any topics to go through? Perfect. Well, guys, thank you for the platform. I took 3 minutes extra of your time, and I apologize for that.
I think you can be forgiven. Thanks, Jason. Great job tonight, and great job to everybody with the conversation and discussion. I think that, one of the things I've really liked about having these statewide meetings is the ability to have those conversations so that we do know what we're doing, across the state and not just in our own backyard. That's certainly appreciated. But if there are no questions for Jason at this time, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Next week, we do have a presentation from the Southwest, which really is the entire southern part of the state. So we'll be at 5 o'clock next Wednesday. So it's a little bit different time. And that's because we have an executive board meeting that night as well at 6:30. So we had to make the wrestling meeting a little bit earlier. So 5 o'clock, I'll be sending out the invitations on Friday and then again on Wednesday. And if you have any questions, if you think of something after the fact that you need me to forward to Jason, please feel free to send that my way. And I'm sure you all have his email address as well if you want to just shoot it to him directly. So Thank you everybody for your time and your participation. And I look forward to see you again next Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Same to you.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Good night.
Good night.
Later, Miko.
Later, Carlos. Take it easy, brother.
You too, man.
Peace out, brothers.
Later, Pat.
Night, guys.
Good night. See you, Dana. See you, Rusty.